Well, hey there. Good to be with you all on the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast on this episode of The Aftermath, because we get to talk about a win. And we also had something fun for the show occur a little earlier today that we'll be getting out to you pretty soon. We teased it last week, so that'll be a fun video and audio thing for you all to digest. But I'm Anthony. He is John. The Bengals come up victorious at home and in a big, dominating way, John Sheeran. 41-24 over the, don't call them Oakland, the Las Vegas Raiders. And outside of the first, outside of the first quarter, that game didn't really feel like it was very close, did it?
No, it definitely felt like it was over by the time the fourth quarter came around. I don't think it felt that way to Mr. Joe Burrow based off of his mannerisms and what he said after the game, but no, like they had control over the entire game. And for as much as we lamented about the current state of affairs leading up to this one, I think we all had confidence that they could handle a team that was proven to be lesser than them. And as judged by, I think, the Raiders firing 3 of their coaches as of this morning based off of that porous performance, I think our expectations were met. I think we all knew that they were going to win. I don't think we knew they were going to score 41 points, but hell, they could have had even more.
Yeah, they could have had even more. I mean, we could have been looking at a 50 burger there, if not more, if some things went a little differently. I don't want to say it was a perfect game because I know there were missed opportunities, and we'll talk. We've got a lot to get to. We're going to break down the game a little bit. We're going to give out some awards, give out some injury updates, and that sort of thing. I don't want to say it was not a perfect game because there were missed opportunities there. But I would argue probably the most complete performance we've seen from the team, I guess, across the board. I mean, all 3 phases played pretty well. The first field goal attempt that was made by Evan McPherson was a little close. It was a little close to the right goalpost there. But, I mean, and they Rico just missed pinning this one, like at the, 4 millimeter line, it looked like. But, I mean, other than that, the turnovers, defense, I mean, you gave up a late touchdown there, but really, I mean, the Raiders were having, they were having a little bit of a dry spell there. But, I mean, there were some problems on defense too. Again, far from perfect, but still, I think overall, would you call this probably their most complete win of the year?
I mean, the problem is the only one that you can compare to is them beating the Panthers, who's like one of the only teams that are worse than who the Raiders are at this moment. I mean, when you have Gardner Minshew and then Desmond Ridder coming into the game, I mean, it's pretty much over at that point. And this defense, as we've seen, it pretty much lives and dies by the pass rush and whether or not that they can generate pressure against the offensive line at that point. And I think the Raiders were down like 3, maybe even 4 offensive linemen in this game. I don't even know if they had like a tight end out there pass protecting along the edge in like an emergency situation, but Trey Hendrickson had 4 freaking sacks and touched the quarterback like 7 times in this one. So that pretty much told you everything you needed to know about how the Raiders were doing in terms of protecting and kind of running their offense. But yeah, as soon as the Raiders they weren't going to have any consistent offensive success. And the Bengals, on the other hand, were able to find a run game for the first time in like a month, right? You had Chase Brown leading the way with 27 carries, looking like his senior year at Illinois when he did that, I think, 6 times in 12 games back there in his last year for the Fighting Illini. Like, it was everything that the Bengals needed to do to just look like a competent team against the team that they should be. And like you said, plenty of miscues that happened in the second half that led to their quarterback not necessarily feeling satisfied after the game, but a definite step in the right direction towards, maybe even getting one of these wins against a quality team.
Well, just a teaser of our conversation we had with TJ Hushmanzada. That'll be dropping soon, so look forward to that one. But that's one of the elements that we talked about was quality of opponents, quality of wins, and that's what makes the opportunity this Thursday night so important really for the outlook of the Bengals season. And we can talk a little bit more about that in a little bit here. But here's some let's talk about likes and dislikes in this one, right? So likes for me, I will say, the run game is one of them. Chase Brown, almost 150 all-purpose yards, I think, and receiving touchdown. I mean, dude had a game, and that's what you want to see is some of that consistency. So I'm with you on that. I like that. I like the tight end stepping up. Sample getting in there. Obviously, Gesicki getting 2 touchdowns in this one. So. No T. Higgins, unfortunately, and we'll talk more about this later. Eric All leaves the game, so you're down another receiving weapon, and then no Jermaine Burton, all of that kind of stuff, and so you got to get creative. And the Bengals dialed up some good plays to their tight ends, and I like that from the offensive standpoint too, John.
Yeah, we talked about before the Eagles game how Gesicki had basically become an afterthought in the offense, and that was a week into. I guess T. Higgins being injured, and all of a sudden now after the last 2 weeks he leads all tight ends in the NFL in receiving yards with 173 and 2 touchdowns to boot. One of them was obviously a huge play at the end of the game where it probably didn't matter that much. The game was probably already in hand, but he's stepped up specifically in the slot. Like 68% of his snaps of the last 2 weeks have come in the slot, and that's kind of what they've been doing in terms of replacing T. Higgins and trying to move things around. It's gotten Yoshi to the outside a little bit more, and he had more positive moments in this game than he did in the past couple of games combined. He even he returned to the end zone as well. Drew Sample, I think, ended up playing the most that he's played all season because Eric All unfortunately suffered a torn ACL in the second quarter. So it did seem like the offense had to make some type of a shift there in the middle of the game because, you would figure that without T. Higgins, you'd see a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of those packages that you saw earlier in the season because you want to compensate for the lack of receiving talent in this game because you only had 4 receivers who were active throughout the game. But then Mike Gesicki basically stepped up and they almost became like a spread offense towards the end of the game when they were running Chase Brown successfully out of shotgun. The offensive line was finally generating movement at the point of attack. Like that Raiders defensive line, it was still, again, it was top 12 in terms of rush defense, in terms of EPA per play and success rate over the past month without Christian Wilkins. So they weren't necessarily slouches in terms of stopping other teams against the run. So I thought it was impressive that the Bengals were able to find consistency and just generate movement. It made Chase Brown's life a lot easier. And then you saw his flashes of gaining past line of scrimmage, making guys miss, running through contact. That's how he got, I think, 120 something yards on the ground on those 27 carries. So really busy day for him, but really efficient as well. It's their best running performance since that Panthers game in week 4. So you had guys step up with other guys being injured. Cody Ford, I think, played fine at left tackle in his second start for Orlando Brown. Amarius Mims played pretty much almost perfect against Max Crosby. Crosby did get in one time when they didn't call for offsides or whatever the case may have been, but really solid play from the tackles and pass protection, really quality blocking from the interior offensive line in terms of run blocking. It was what you needed in terms of balance, and then you allowed Joe Burrow to just take over and do what he does best on those off-script plays in the red zone. That's how you ended up with 41 points in this game.
Yeah, it's almost become a deal when Burrow rolls out of the pocket around the, if they're at the 10-yard line, 5-yard line, someone's just you can't guard those guys that long, right? I mean, you just can't cover them that long. And so someone's going to break open and he's going to find them. So it's almost a little bit of an expectation there that that's going to happen. Obviously, Burrow, that your star players played really well on both sides of the ball. Burrow played very well. The pick 6 was yikes, but, really I called it 17 points because, I mean, that's really what the defense allowed in this game. So, I guess that was not a good moment, but I mean, 5 touchdowns and he's just being pretty efficient all across the board there. The defense, I like the swagger. There were some things I did not like from the defense as well, but Trey Hendrickson, obviously 4 sacks, was a star. Chris Jenkins had another sack in this game. So, you're getting some contributions, not only from your stars, but elsewhere. There's still some moments from the secondary and against the run defense, and the Raiders were coming into this game horrible at running the football. Both of their starting running backs were barely over 3.0 0 yards per carry. I think Madison was at 3.1 and Zamir White was lower than that, or vice versa. So, I mean, they were not running the ball well with their couple of their top backs, and they were kind of gaining some ground early in that front. So, you know, I don't know. There were some things again from the defense that I liked, and some others where I go, man, there's still, you know, when you come across those quality opponents, what's going to happen? Are they building momentum, or is this just a house of cards because of the opponents they've been playing?
Right. And I think if the game had a different type of a script, I think the Raiders' run game would have been even a little bit better. Like Madison only touched the ball, I think, 9 times, and he had like an EPA per play of like 0.17. So because the game script was so uneven after that first quarter, you know, the Raiders, like, they went up 7-0, and you're thinking, oh, is this going to be a game where the Bengals are going to get, just trampled all over on against the ground? But, you know, the offense responded, and then they took advantage of obviously scoring at the end of the first half, scoring in the second half, and this kind of took off from there. But yeah, it was a bit concerning, I think, in the beginning of the game, and how easy the Raiders were able to move the ball on that defense. And then BJ Hill, it was kind of surprising how he played 12 snaps, and then he was declared out at halftime, and it didn't really feel like you noticed that he wasn't out there, which was a good sign. Chris Jenkins played a lot more. I think he played like his season high of snaps. McKinley Jackson played right next to him. So those two guys were responsible for filling in those snaps. But again, it was just playing with that lead and allowing the defensive line to be aggressive. It's what got them all those pressures against quarterbacks that unfortunately had no chance of kind of overcoming it and just don't play well against pressure at all. And then Trey Hendrickson, like you said, he's just that caliber player that can take over a game and just make it his own. And that's what you saw against a matchup nightmare for the Bengals in that case. And like how last week he was kind of a non-factor against what you would have thought would have been a good matchup for him. So guys like that always tend to bounce back. You know, you're not going to keep Trey Hendrickson down for long. And, you know, if he has 0 sacks one week, he can have 4 sacks next week. And that's just what elite players are made of. I think you're muted.
What I was trying to say was that the unfortunate thing that comes after this kind of dominant win by the Bengals, and, you know, different things that we liked about it and things we can nitpick. Unfortunately, what's kind of been the talking point are some of the video clips that have come out of this game, be it during the game, be it after the game, all of that stuff. And so there's still, even though the Bengals are creeping towards reaching 500, and they've got a big game ahead of them rather. You know, the talking points unfortunately appear to be, you know, what was the exchange between Burrow and Burton on the sideline? What was that about? What was the exchange? You know, I mean, there was I think it was our buddy Zim or somebody pointed out that Burrow tossed back the game ball that gave it, you know, what does that mean? There's also some talk about, and I think Burrow, it's been said on Bengals.com, et cetera, that Burrow told the rest of the team, like, don't even celebrate this one. We have a huge game Thursday. So, I mean, you know, as much as we like the 5 passing touchdowns, points scored, dominant win at home, first win at home, all of this, the talking points unfortunately appear to be the ancillary noise, right? The different things about, you know, where is this team? Where are they at? And where are they at mentally? Where are they at, you know, on the field too?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about this, because personally, I think a lot of it just has to do with timing, just because there's a quick turnaround from Sunday to Thursday. Like the Bengals, like there's only 3 days left until they have to travel to Baltimore and play arguably the most important game of the season. There's just no real time to kind of, you know, sit on your laurels and just celebrate this win. And also just the win being against a team that you're expected to beat. Like you were 7.5 point favorites at home, and you took care of business. And at this point, you're still 4-5. And I think a lot of people were going to look back at this win and be like, yeah, like it's a great win and you did a lot of things right, but it's against the Raiders and you're still below 500. You're still outside of the playoff picture. And all of that, I think, was coming out in terms of what Burrow's demeanor was and what his facial expressions was, and how he literally quoted Kobe Bryant. There's nothing, what's there to be happy about, right? Job's not finished. He didn't say that part, but that's what he was implying. And there's still more work to do. And I think he was just trying to get that message across. I don't think he was minimizing, like, yeah, like we did some good things and everything, but just the quick turnaround nature of going from Sunday at home to then Thursday on the road. And you're not going to have a full week of practice here. Like it's just time to just get locked in again and try to repeat this on Thursday, because it's going to be a very tall task to accomplish.
Yeah. as you look at this, and then Rob Duncan in our live chat says these talking points you just raised, tell me my quarterback is locked in. Maybe that is the case, and maybe it is Burrow kind of taking the team on his back as we've seen him do. There just seems to be, I don't know if controversy is the right word, but there just seems to be more ambient noise, more I'm trying to think of the right phrase here, honestly. I mean, there seems to be more focusing on different things other than, and I guess it's because they aren't really where they have been, especially in those championship runs. They're not really where they've been there, but there just seems to be a focus on that. And I guess, kind of to your point, the only way they're going to start eliminating that is racking up more wins, racking up quality wins against quality opponents. And it does start this Thursday, but to me, I still think, and I said this last week when we were previewing this game, I still think this is kind of a little bit of what the doctor ordered for the Bengals in terms of going into this game to Baltimore now is dominant win. You're feeling pretty good about it. It looked like the defense was kind of showing some swagger out there, and Gesicki's doing the gritty, and it looked a little more fun. Looked like there was a little more fun being had this week, whereas in weeks prior, even when they got wins, it didn't appear to be all that fun and jubilant and that sort of thing. Now, I think Burrow's trying to rein that in a little bit because you're not even at 500 at this point, and it's midway through the season. So I get that, but still, a big part of me wants to believe that this is kind of that turning point. One of the more complete games they've played, scored a lot of points, got the win, and feeling pretty good about yourself heading into yet also knowing the task at hand and the size of the task at hand on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do a comparison, like the Bengals got embarrassed by the Cleveland Browns on Monday Night Football 2 years ago on Halloween, and then they turned around on kind of a short week and then beat the crap out of the Carolina Panthers at home. And that started what ended up being a 10-game win streak that went into the playoffs and was unfortunately ended in the AFC Championship game. And similar timing, obviously, with it being the beginning of November when that happened. But yeah, there's a track record for something like this happening before, which, I agree. Like, it doesn't matter who you do beat to start that win streak, so long as the win streak does start. But obviously, the road to repeating that is going to be extremely difficult. They have many tough games on the road, right ahead of their schedule and whatnot. So it's not going to be emulatable. And yeah, I think it was that combined with there were definite, miscues and errors, similar things that we've seen in weeks past, where I think was kind of on Burrow's mind. And yeah, it's obviously fun throwing touchdowns and Mike Gesicki doing the gritty, his version of the gritty for the first time. I think that kind of sparked some smiles from everyone, but yeah, there's just more that they can do, and there's more that they can improve upon. And I think there were some aspects of this team that are still, like, if you compare them to the Baltimore Ravens, like, I think the Ravens are rightfully, favorites in this upcoming matchup. And I think everyone now kind of knows that, as, the joy of winning has kind of faded away. And I think Burrow is just a little bit ahead of that. So yeah, it's weird seeing that kind of disconnect, I guess, but I think you do need that type, like, that's the type of leadership that a guy like Burrow can provide. Like, he's not going to be the rah yell in your face type of, he's just going to lead by his example, and everyone needs to kind of follow that. And in this case, it's just, yeah, good win, but let's turn it around right now. We got some more things to improve upon, and we have very little time to do so.
Yeah. Well, Bengals defeat the Raiders 41-24. We talked about some of the things we liked and some of the things we disliked in this one. Obviously a lot more to like than dislike, but even though this still feels like the most, arguably the most complete game the Bengals have played to this point, there's questions about the legitimacy of the teams they're playing and beating. And then there are questions about, really, when are they going to start looking more and more complete, like a more and more complete team. So at any rate, the Bengals get the win, improved to 4-5 against the Raiders. Much needed win and confidence booster going into a big game against the Baltimore Ravens. This is the Orange and Black Insiders Bengals podcast, and this is the aftermath where we break down a little bit time to digest the game, and we break down what we saw, what's happening with the team, and obviously maybe a little peek of a look ahead, you can get this show on the Believe in Cincy podcast channel, part of the Believe Podcast Network. You have to go resubscribe to the Believe in Cincy podcast channel to do that. And then, of course, you can get this show by subscribing to our YouTube channel underneath John there. There is an Orange and Black Insider show icon. You can click that, subscribe, click the bell, all that good stuff. And then, of course, like I said, get it through your favorite audio streamer. We've streamed live on Cincy Jungle's Facebook page and Twitter accounts and all kinds of stuff. So get it how you can. John, where do you want to pivot to next? Do you want to do the bad news with the injury updates, or do you want to do more feel good stuff with some weekly awards?
I just kind of want to still feel good. I'm not
Okay.
going to go full Burrow here. Let's still try to remember this win a little bit.
Okay, so let's talk about. I'm trying to remember. I know we do like unsung hero, and we do. Do we do defensive MVP and offensive MVP? Do we do team MVP? How did we? Well,
defensive MVP is going to be. It's just Trey Hendrickson, right? Let's just move past that.
Right. I guess it's more okay. Who's the MVP? Because is it Trey Hendrickson? Is it Joe Burrow? Or is it someone like Chase Brown? Those are probably your three most obvious people. So. I feel like there's less debate there, but is it Burrow and his 5 touchdowns? Is it Hendrickson with his 4 sacks, or 157 yards from scrimmage from Chase Brown?
I'm going to say Chase Brown, because I think Burrow being dominant in the red zone, that's nothing new. And there was a time in this game where I think he was at like 160 yards and 4 touchdowns. And that was evident because they were moving the ball because of Chase Brown. They were moving the ball because the offensive line was creating holes in movement for him. And again, he's done this in college. Like, people forget that he had like 600 something or 500 something carries coming out of college, which is a lot for a running back to get drafted nowadays. He was a bell cow for a year at Illinois, but he'd never done it at the NFL level. And then Zach Moss gets injured with a neck late last week. They don't really have anyone who's willing or who's able to come in and be like an equal in the committee in the backfield with Chase Brown. So he takes 27 other 28 carries. The only other one was Joe Burrow sneaking the ball. So it was all on his shoulders, and he had the best game of his career. And again, the Raiders defense, like, coming into this game, was a pretty solid rushing defense. So I don't think it was just like, oh, it's the Raiders, it doesn't really count. It was still a porous running offense entering this week with Zach Moss, Chase Brown kind of sharing the load. And then you put it all on Chase Brown to do it by himself, and he looks phenomenal. And he's the reason why the Bengals were able to get into scoring position so many times, and then Burrow obviously finishing it off. So for Chase Brown to do that for the first time in his NFL career, I'll give him the offensive MVP for sure.
Okay. I think in terms of overall MVP, is that who your overall MVP is for the game? Yeah,
I would say that too. Yeah.
Okay. It's not a bad choice to be had here. I'm still going to go with Trey, and I have a, and it sounds weird to say that when your quarterback throws 5 touchdowns, right? It's like, but the defense has been more under the microscope for blame, right? And then I admittedly, on Cincy Jungle, there's a winners and losers article that goes up, and I've been doing some of those this year, and I did it this week. And you kind of type as the game goes on, because it's one of those that gets pushed out shortly after the game ends, very shortly after the game ends. And after the first quarter, I actually started. I'm like, do I need to start putting Trey Hendrickson in the losers, because he was quiet again, and following up on that inexplicable game against the Eagles, right? And so I'm like, man, is this what's going on here? And then he, of course, explodes, 4 sacks, forced fumble. Just all over the place. The one that he got just under the tackle there, and just, pushed him back on his back. It was like, wow. So that's the kind of thing the Bengals need. They still need to get some help elsewhere. With pass rush help. They just need it. But at any point, I still think just where the defense has been and everything, Trey Hendrickson gets my vote by a very narrow margin, just because of that dominant type of performance. And the Bengals need that kind of stuff. They need the defense to step up in a number of different ways.
Oh my god, dude! Like I think it was against the Raiders back in 2012 where Gino Atkins had like the most shocking sack I've ever seen. Like I think it was that game. I might be confusing it. Maybe it was because of the way that he tackled or he sacked Carson Palmer. But when Trey did that bull rush and just cleaned that guy off of his shoes, it looked like Gino Atkins. It looked like prime Gino Atkins, which is makes it more impressive considering Gino is doing that from the defensive tackle spot where you have less of a runway. But it was just such a personification of how big of a mismatch that was. That was like the Raiders' like third string left tackle, and he had no chance. And that should put, if he wasn't already on the map for a lot of people, he now leads the league in sacks, and he's on his way to what should be his first team All Pro selection. If people didn't know about him before, like that shows you how he wins, and that shows you that if you give him any sort of space and any sort of mismatch, he's going to take advantage.
Yeah. So, I mean, not a bad choice among them. Now let's go with unsung hero. Who's someone that stepped up either because of injury or maybe their performance was great and got lost in the shuffle because of those big three guys doing things. Who do you got for your unsung hero this week?
I feel like we already sung the praises a little bit of Mike Gesicki, so I'm not going to go with him. I'm actually going to go with Jordan Battle a little bit because this was the first game where he played more than Von Bell. It was kind of trending in that direction, but he only played like 3 snaps against the Eagles. We kind of, lamented on him giving up the touchdown to Devontae Smith because that was not a good matchup for him. But then I think it was the second drive of the game where he was covering Brock Bowers, and then Bowers kind of beat him pretty cleanly on a third down. And then on the next third down, he was covering Bowers on like a wheel route, and he timed the pass breakup perfectly. He was right in his hip pocket, made a great play on arguably one of the better tight ends in the NFL. And I think he had a really solid game, and he earned the snaps that he got. I think he ended up out snapping Von Bell because just the game was out of hand at a certain point. He had a lot of second stringers playing towards the end of the game. So maybe if it was closer, he wouldn't have outsnapped Von Bell, but I think he played really solid in this one. He had a lot of good moments. He had a bounce back moment against a really quality player at that matchup. And it just furthers his case that he should see the field a little bit more, because some of these guys, they do get better with more on-field reps. And that seems to be the case with him.
I'm going to go, and that's a good one. I mean, I thought about maybe Mike Hilton. He made a couple of nice plays late. He was the team leader in tackles, but like you said, guys were in and out of the lineup, potentially, especially starters late in the game type of thing. I'm going to go with the guys who kicked the ball. Evan McPherson, 2 for 2, and I'm pretty sure he was perfect on his extra points, right? So 2 for 2 there after, kind of, I don't know, not hot seat or anything like that. People going, what's going on here? And granted, it wasn't a 50-plus yard or anything. The long was 44, but still not a gimme. And then Rico having it would have been even better, but three punts for 175 total yards there. I mean, the guy's just kicking the hell out of the ball. Look, in a game that you really need to squash the opponent, your special teams needs to come up in a big way, and you don't have Charlie Jones this week or anything like that. So the guys who are kicking the ball, working field position, getting the points when needed. Those are the two that I've got.
I like that. And I think that was the first time, at least for me, that I've ever seen a punt get challenged in terms of where it went out of bounds. I think if they had just a better replay angle, they would have probably said that, yeah, probably went out just at the nanometer, but I can understand why they thought it was kind of inconclusive and just had to just let it stand and it went out of bounds. But he's done that, I think, twice now. Like the one against the Ravens, I want to say, where he punted like 80 something yards and it barely went out of bounds. He's getting so close to just perfecting that, and it's just the most valuable thing that a punter could possibly do, because I mean it's going to happen one day.
Yeah. Well, those are the awards we got this week, and we'll pivot now, unfortunately, to the injuries. Man, and especially just gutted in general, but especially gutted because we got to know, and hopefully you all did as well, we got to know this young man a little bit better on our show a couple months ago, right before the season. He had made such an incredible quick comeback. He was becoming one of the more reliable players on offense when his number was called. And unfortunately, Eric All, it was confirmed Monday, tore his ACL, and it was, John, the same ACL that he had the injury on before. So that is not good news. Just a heartbreaking thing. And obviously also some damage to your offense and your productivity there.
I mean, the reason why he was playing so much is because he could do everything, and replacing that guy is not easy. You're back to square one essentially with this tight end group where you have Gesicki, who is a receiving specialist. You have Drew Sample, who can only catch passes like within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Tanner Hudson is basically Gesicki light. You haven't really you've seen nothing out of Tanner McLaughlin outside of practice, so he's probably going to play more naturally, but you don't know what he can do in terms of his overall skill set. Eric All was seen in the field because he could do it all, and he caught 2 passes in this game. It seemed like he was getting more and more involved in the downfield passing game. Like he caught an 18-yard reception, I think 5 plays before the 8-yard reception where it was a non-contact injury. He tried to cut up field, and it's going to be another bullet point in the Players Association in terms of getting rid of turf field. But it was, I believe, a contact injury that tore his right ACL last year, which happened, I think, in September. And then, it took him, what is that, like 10 months to fully recover and return. So you're hopeful that, he can return for the beginning of the 2025 season. And maybe the fact that he's done this before, he's learned a couple things and maybe can accelerate that process. But it really does stink that a guy takes so long to recover from one injury just to suffer it again as he's developing and has established himself as such a critical member of the offense. And he really became the valuable piece that this tight end group is missing, and replacing him is not going to be easy. They just need to get really creative with it.
Yeah. And then no practice for the Bengals, but we still have some updates on some of the guys who have been ailing and or dealing with some things.
Yeah. So we heard from Zach Taylor earlier today, and 5 players, not including Eric All, would not have practiced Monday. They released like an estimated injury report. 2 of them, obviously, Orlando Brown Jr., T. Higgins, they didn't practice at all last week. They didn't play. It's a short week. You probably don't expect them to practice at all this week. They only have like a light walkthrough on Tuesday, and then they travel Wednesday after maybe another walkthrough. But now that those guys practiced, but it's not 100% that they're not going to play. Like Zach is kind of leaving that door open. They can maintenance them if need be, and we'll see what happens there. Zach Moss, that injury with his neck happened, I believe, between Thursday night and Friday morning, according to Taylor. They're going to learn more about it this week. He's not been put on IR yet, but it doesn't seem likely that he's going to be able to play this week. But again, there's not enough information with that. Charlie Jones also suffered like a groin injury late last week. He didn't practice on Friday. He didn't play. Again, the short week really complicates these things, but he wouldn't have practiced on Monday. And BJ Hill, who again played 12 snaps, injured his rib, was declared out by halftime. He would not have practiced Monday either. But according to Taylor, that injury is not as serious as they originally thought yesterday. Doesn't mean he's going to play on Thursday, but I don't think it's out of the question. And the only other guys who were limited were Sam Hubbard, Geno Stone with the hamstring and shin injury, respectively. So in terms of just getting out of this game, the real big loss was Eric All, and he's going to be out for the season. But other than that, it's looking like maybe BJ Hill could be out maybe this week, and we'll see from there.
And remind me, is the expectation that Higgins, was the ploy for Higgins to rest this week on the short week to get him back for the Ravens game? Is that kind of the operating thought?
Yeah, like I think that's in play, and obviously I don't think Zach would have wanted to say that was the plan until it actually happens. But, right. It's just it's just so tough for these guys that have to have this such a quick turnaround. And maybe if this game was on Sunday, you'd feel more confident about it. But he's definitely, along with Orlando Brown Jr., like one of those guys that you would trust to be able to suit up and play even if they don't practice. And again, there's just not like a real practice this week, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, I don't know that unless he's in real bad shape, I don't know that I foresee Orlando Brown missing this game here if he can go. But thanks, John, for updating us on the injuries, and then just a few other news and notes here. The Bengals and Chargers game a couple weeks from now. I believe I'm going to be going to that. I hope I am. That got flexed to Sunday night. It was originally, I believe, Jets Colts, right? And with the Jets kind of, what are they, 3-6 or something? And the Colts are, mediocre, I guess. But they decided that Burrow versus Herbert is a more of a watchable thing. And obviously, the Bengals coming off a 41-point game, they felt that is, something that will be more palatable than the game that they previously had on the slate. So Bengals in primetime again. Is that the 6th one they have this year? 6th game?
it is not only their 6th primetime game, they are going to have 4 road primetime games in a row sandwiched between 2 home primetime games. And as we all remember, they lost the first one against the Washington Commanders at home on Monday Night Football, but they played the Giants Sunday Night Football. They're about to play the Ravens on Thursday Night Football. They're going to play the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. They're going to play the Chargers on Sunday Night Football now, and then they're going to play the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. I don't know if any other team has to play 4 consecutive road primetime games this year, or if that's even normal on any year, but it's what the Bengals have to do. And again, like you said, it makes sense why you wouldn't want the Jets to be on primetime again for the next 5 years, because that's always an abomination. And maybe Joe Flacco versus Aaron Rodgers would have been fun in like 2012, but it's not fun anymore. Burrow versus Herbert is a lot more fun. And now you have the Bengals, who are still, I think they're 9th right now in the AFC playoff picture, and the Chargers are 6th as a wildcard team. So pretty significant playoff implications depending on the result for this one. So it makes sense.
Yeah, so just to recap on that, what you were expressing there, looking forward at the schedule, Bengals play Thursday night, obviously, against the Ravens. Then they play the following Sunday, the 17th, Sunday night against the Chargers. Then they've got the standard 1 p.m. Eastern as of now against the Steelers on December 1st. So there's a bye in between those 2 games. Like you said, there's the Monday night game, which is the Simpsons game, I guess, against the Cowboys at 5:15. Then they have another, Sunday 1 p.m.er against the Titans, and then they've got the Thursday night game against the Browns late in the season. Also, there's still some to be determined times for the Broncos game and the second Steelers game that they end the season with. So we'll see if those get moved around at all time wise. They try and make it interesting at the end there. And the Broncos, they're making things a little interesting as well. It's kind of a little bit of a surprise team this year, as are the Steelers in a way. Those are kind of a couple of surprise teams, but we kind of had more confidence in who the Steelers were than the Broncos. But and then I took it off to the trade deadline, John. There's been some talk. I think it's Diana Rossini of ESPN. There's also some aggregator accounts that are making some noise about potentially Bengals interested in Chase Young, that sort of thing. I don't know how viable that is. Bengals have reportedly been interested in potentially Azeez Ojulari, a veteran cornerback that has not been named. So do you think that they do the extremely unexpected and trade for a player before the deadline?
I'm going to say no, it doesn't happen, but I do think that they're trying, and I think it's like pulling teeth with them. It's going to be like the price is going to be like a 5th or a 6th round pick, and maybe they're going to want to try to do like a pick swap or something like that. I do think they will try, and it's not what anyone wants to hear. You don't want to hear that a team just tried to do a trade or tried to sign a player and they didn't end up doing it. So I do think that the reports are credible. The Bengals are making calls for either a running back or a cornerback or a pass rusher, all positions that they need. If you're expecting them to convince Max Crosby to have not gotten on that flight to Las Vegas and keep him around and take on whatever contract that is, you're going to be sorely mistaken. It wouldn't totally shock me if they added just a player that could play, significant snaps, but I'm not necessarily expecting a star if it does happen. And gun to my head again, if I had to predict if it does happen, I'm going to say no, but I do think that they are making calls, and it's just going to be a matter of that they want to give up one of their precious day 3 draft picks. Yeah,
twice it's happened in their entire history as a team, right? For a player trade in season. To me, it baffles me if that you would cling so closely to these day 3 picks. I mean, there are guys that are a bit more proven than some pie in the sky 6th round pick, and thankfully we talked to a 7th round pick who was one of the more successful Bengals ever. So every once in a while you'll strike on one of those, but I don't know if you're really trying to push your team over the edge. You're seeing what your rivals and contemporaries are doing, and namely the Kansas City Chiefs, collecting big time players. You would think that, I know it's more than just a pick. There's money to be, all of that stuff, but still, it shows not only the people in the locker room, but also us dweebs outside of the locker room that they're trying to get better. They're trying to make a push. They're trying to improve their roster, maybe even remedy some of the injury issues that they've been having, that sort of thing, just to continue to stay relevant and competitive and then hopefully push into the playoffs.
At the end of the day, a fourth, fifth, sixth round pick doesn't cost very much against the salary cap, and there's a possibility that that player could be potentially Chase Brown or potentially George Iloka or potentially Marvin Jones, right? There's always a chance of that, and then you get a surplus in value, and that's how the Bengals have always operated, because they don't like to give up those opportunities to bring in cheap talent, because they don't do contracts the way the other teams do. Unfortunately for them, it's possible that you could trade for a player, let him go on his expiring contract, and then get a compensatory pick for said player, and then you could get a net zero in terms of draft capital lost in this 2-year span. But pulling teeth, man, pulling teeth.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens with the rest of the way here. The Bengals have a big game Thursday night. We'll be back to preview that, as well as bring you the interview with TJ Hushmanzada. So that was a lot of fun talking with him for a little bit. Conversation went a lot of different places, which is cool. A little bit of here and now, a little bit of back then, all that kind of stuff. But it was fun. So we'll get that to you ASAP. But we appreciate all of you tuning in again. Go subscribe to the Believe in Cincy podcast channel through your favorite audio streamer, where you can get this show, Talking Football with Bengal Jim and Friends, the Matt and Willie No Ball with the coach Matt Minnick and Willie Lutz, as well as 3 and Out with Jason and Kevin. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get our videos. There are the 3 and Out videos on there, as all we house those there. Subscribe, click the bell, do the thumbs up, all that stuff. We appreciate that. And then, of course, you just keep it to the Cincy Jungle Facebook page, do the Twitter thing, X thing, whatever, and we'll be peppering you with more content coming out, and hopefully the Bengals are collecting more and more wins going forward. I'm Anthony. He's John. We are out of here, and we'll see you later this week. See you, John.
See you guys.